Well, today is Super Tuesday, the biggest day of the presidential primary season so far.
It's election day for voters in more than a dozen states and in one territory. CBS News' Skylar Henry joins us live now from Alexandria, Virginia, with a look at voting and the top issues for voters this year. Skylar.
Hey, Dan and Ryan, good morning to the both of you. Well, one of those top issues, especially if you pay attention to several of these Super Tuesday states, if you will be how Arab and Muslim American communities respond to President Joe Biden. Last week in Michigan's primary, more than 100,000 voters voted uncommitted in protest to the president's stance in terms of his support of Israel and the war with Hamas in Gaza right now. It's ironic, especially considering the fact that the White House and members of the Biden campaign will ramp up this call for more humanitarian assistance in that region right now. But as for what we're seeing, a steady stream of voters here in Virginia making their ways to the polls and trying to make their voices heard here as the front runners, both the former president and the current one, look to inch closer to securing the White House.
Super Tuesday is here with hundreds of delegates up for grabs. Last night, the GOP frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, swept the North Dakota GOP caucuses. It followed the release of the Supreme Court's unanimous decision, which says states like Colorado cannot disqualify Trump from the ballot.
It was a very important decision. I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together.
For Republican rival Nikki Haley, it's make or break amid growing GOP calls for her to drop out of the race. Though over the weekend, she picked up her first primary win in Washington, D.C.
We can either have more of the same or we can go in a new direction.
New CBS News polling shows that a large margin of likely voters have negative feelings about a possible Biden versus Trump rematch.
Those same polls show President Biden currently 4 points behind Trump in a head-to-head matchup. Meanwhile, activists in states like Minnesota are pushing those headed to Democratic primary polls today to vote uncommitted in protest of Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza.
We all want this conflict to end as soon as possible.
Even if both frontrunners pull off a clean sweep tonight, they still won't win enough delegates to clinch their party's nomination.
And so while the president, or the former president, if you will, is expected to continue to tout his Supreme Court decision win, if you will, from yesterday in terms of getting his base out there and voting, President Biden will look to try to do the same a little later on this week. He has his State of the Union address, which we know is on Thursday, where he is expected to talk about what he and his administration have been able to do over the course of the last 3 years, before he hits the campaign trail and heads to several battleground states at the end of this week. Guys.
So, Skylar, you mentioned in your reporting there that no candidate can clinch the nomination today. However, when we're talking about Nikki Haley, her campaign has only won a single primary. So is today her last hurrah, or will her campaign keep going?
Well, let's look at it from two perspectives, Dana. On one hand, you have a campaign that is looking to ultimately stay alive, if you will, and they have to perform well in order to do that, getting 20, 30, 40% of the vote later on today would absolutely do just that, or at least justify a reason to stay in this race, because there's going to come a point where they have to either A, have a tough conversation with their campaign and see should they continue to move forward, and have a conversation with campaign donors to see can they continue to get more money in order to keep moving forward. On the other hand, no one really knows how the year will shake out in terms of the legal ramifications surrounding the former president. What will happen inside of a courtroom? Will he be in an additional courtroom following the Supreme Court's hearing that argument as to whether he has presidential immunity or not? So those things are interesting as well. And the former UN ambassador could decide she wants to sort of stick around and sort of wait this out to see how far she can go up until the RNC later on this summer. So we'll see, but certainly is a big test for her today as she looks to try to at least win some of those states for Super Tuesday.
Yeah, lots of unknowns still. Skylar Henry, thank you.
She only has Washington, D.C. right now to count as a victory, so
correct.
she needs some wins.
We appreciate it. And CBS News will have complete Super Tuesday coverage. You can watch the results live at 9 o'clock on an hour-long CBS News special report. We'll also have the latest on the CBS 2 News at 10 and on our website, cbschicago.com.